in the script it simply says, Travis looked at the mirror and talks to himself and plays with his gun. And I was in Los Angeles, and Bob called me up and I said, well, what does he say? And probably the last time he ever asked a writer that. And, I said, I don't know, Bob. It's like you're a kid, you know. You're standing in front of the mirror, you got your cowboy guns on, you're going, pow, 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 gotcha, stuff like that. I said, no, just that kind of stuff. He said, okay. And then somebody told me that there was a guy, a Jewish comedian who would work the delis, like Cats and places like that.
Right.
And he would go from table to table and say, hey, you talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? And Bob was there one night and he heard this.
You said something really interesting about Travis, that if the film were to continue, he may in fact repeat the cycle. Does he transcend?
No.
No.
Not by a long shot.
No way, Travis.
Taxi Driver is a loop. The film begins with these sort of highly saturated color shots. At that time, the process was called chemtone. And they're seen in the rearview mirror. And at the end of the movie, those shots come back.
Right.
And the idea behind it was if you took the last frame and spliced it to the first frame, you could just watch it again. And it would just keep going around. And that some years later, De Niro was trying to get Marty and I to do a sequel. And I said to Marty, it's the dumbest fucking idea I ever heard. And I said, well, Bob, keeps asking me about it, and he wants to have lunch and go to his restaurant. So we go to his restaurant, and Bob just wanted a paycheck. Is really all he wanted. And
we're talking 80s or 90s, or what were we
about
talking?
15 years ago.
Oh.
And I said, Bob, it's really the fucking stupidest idea I ever heard. That character died about a year after the film. Yeah. He couldn't have kept living, I said, there's no way he's still alive. There's only one way he's still alive. And if you want to do this character, maybe I can write that one. He's Ted Kaczynski.
Right.
He's sitting in a cabin.
Right.
Creating mail bombs.
He's the Unabomber.
He's the Unabomber.
I have a picture of him. Did you say that to De Niro, and what was his response? Did he?
Well, that wasn't what he had in mind.
No, it wasn't. What about Jake LaMotta? When you were writing dramaturgically that end piece, did you see him as kind of a Grace-like figure as well?
No. Marty did. I didn't.
Yeah.
I saw him as a kind of a thug. Yeah. And an interesting one.
Do you think you'll ever see them on the set again?
Well, I'll never say never, but I don't think so. I don't think those. It would have to be a really magical project for those two egos to find a space that they could co-inhabit. Otherwise, it's going to be a kind of top dog issue, and has
it always been that way? The etymology always been that way?
No. In fact, Marty really didn't know De Niro very well, and so when Taxi Driver first came on, he wanted to do it with Harvey because he knew Harvey had been raised with it.
And Mean Streets, and they had to work together.
Yeah. And the producer and I said to Marty, this is De Niro. It has to be De Niro. De Niro wasn't financeable either at that point.
Godfather 2 had not come out.
No.
Right.
But Marty said, well, I'm not sure about Bob. I don't know. So it's not like they are, separated at birth kind of guys.
Right. Are they similar in any ways?
No, I don't think so. Not much.
Would you like to see it again?
I wrote a script a few years ago that I had Bob in mind, and I went to him about it, and finally, Jane Rosenthal called me, and he said, Bob isn't prepared to do a labor of love unless it's his own thing, and he hasn't found that yet. So, So it was about the money.
Do you guys look at it the same way? Do you think you and Bob and Marty, collectively or separately, do you think on...
There was a moment. He turned down Last Temptation of Christ.
Jesus or Judas?
Jesus.
Jesus.
He said, I can't, I can't play somebody who wears a sheet. Yeah, I think there was a moment, where the sort of people came together at a certain moment, and Marty wisely was able to get Goodfellas and Casino out.
Yeah.
But I think that's, I would be surprised if anything like that happens again.
You think that may have been the last ember?
Yeah, I would think so.
Of something special.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you try to recreate it, and not everybody goes, maybe it wasn't as good as we thought.
You've been a man from the outside, a man of principle. How has that been going?
Well, I mean, look,
how's that been for you, Paul?
It's a very interesting time because movies. The only economic paradigm movies have ever known is capitalism. They were born of capitalism, and they
of capitalism they shall return.
Well, this is why it's interesting because it's changing now. Basically, the idea of movies is if you will pay to see this, we will make it. Nothing to do with patronage, nothing to do with the state, nothing to do with the rich. It's really a populist. You pay for it, we make it. And that was the whole system, and you had to have a lot of people see your films in order to keep making them. And contrary to this, there was a philosophy that started in the 1920s called camera stilo, meaning camera pin. The idea that a movie can be like a poem or a song. You can write it just for yourself. Well, this whole notion never really got anywhere because it costs a lot of money to buy a movie pin, But now, it is now possible to make a movie for no audience. You can make a movie with an iPhone, and that has been done. And we're now getting a whole burst of films that are being made without audiences in mind, really. If you talk to anybody who runs the film festivals, they say we can't even screen everything that's being made anymore.
Yeah.
And so you gain a form of film which defies the old economic paradigm that you must have an audience. And I was saying to Scorsese, we always used to talk about camera stilo. We're going to have our own signature. But the truth is, we never really believed in it because we wanted movies for audiences. We didn't want movies just for ourselves. And I still want movies for audiences.
But you sound excited.
The movies of our generation, the movies of the 70s and 80s, you can't really make those movies anymore. It was interesting. When I came into the film industry, there was a period of crisis. And it was a crisis of content. There was need for new heroes, new characters, new themes. Civil rights, women's liberation, the anti-war movement, the anti-hero. And it was a very exciting time, and we created new kind of characters for new kind of actors. And it lasted about 15 years, and some good movies came out of it. Now we're in a period of equal, if not greater crisis, but our current crisis is a crisis of form. We don't know what movies are anymore. We don't know how long they are. We don't know how you watch them. We don't know whether you interact with them. Are those things on YouTube movies? Well, maybe they are. Is episodic TV a movie? Well, maybe it is. But the old definitions are falling apart. And how much does a movie cost? What should a movie do? We used to have all these rules about film. There are no rules anymore. You can do anything you want. Audiences will simply process it. They'll multitask their way straight through a movie. You don't have to match things up. You don't have to not cross the line. You can put 8mm footage with black and white, with archival footage, and the audiences will just, the technology has changed your brains. You have a different brain than I do. because your brain, we as living, mutating organisms, your brain has already adapted to a technology that when I was your age didn't exist. And therefore, things that I feel are of a certain pace are too complex. You know, at some point, you're working on something and you say, Jesus, we better get a 10-year-old in here to explain it.